Well, welcome to the library studio. We're going to return towards our conclusion of the final word picture as we review what is said not only in the 89th Mizmowr or Psalm, which is God's retort delivered indirectly by his co-author, Ethan Haas Rocky, to his son, who he was not in speaking terms with at this point, Dowd. We took a little detour because of something that was conveyed within the psalm pertaining to Dowd. And what I have learned is that the prophecy pertaining to the mother who would, the woman who would bear a child, and it's wrongly rendered as virgin in so many English translations that are promoted by the Twistian religion, that it is completely misconstrued. So, in our last program, I concluded with an analysis of that terminology, and I'm going to return to it as we proceed through this 89th Mizmowr. Before I do, I was really surprised. About 20 minutes ago, I got a phone call from Facebook. Now, Facebook wouldn't know anything that I'm talking to you about because my live streams will not are unpresentable currently on Facebook because of the errors within their system. So this person called me, and I said, last time I checked, I had 5 strikes against me on Facebook. I'd like to explain each of the 5. I want you to make sure this is being recorded. And I went through each of the 5. That the first was a presentation of the videos that the October 7th Islamic terrorists recorded of themselves killing Jews while screaming Allahu Akbar. I did not present it to encourage terrorism. Obviously, I presented it to show who committed those acts, and so that we are aware of what needs to be done to stop it and to preclude future acts of terrorism. And yet Facebook and all of its wisdom flagged me as promoting terrorism when I was doing exactly the opposite and exposing it and condemning terrorism. The next 2 were both Bondi Beach, Australia acts, where I, as the foremost expert on the Quran, having translated every verse of the Quran and written 5 825-page volumes explaining the nature of Allah, Muhammad, and the Quran, showed that the behavior of the Muslims was consistent with the Quranic message. And yet you have 2 unnamed independent fact checkers who said what I said is untrue when I know infinitely more about Islam than they do. And so you're now 0 for 3. And then the next 2 were in my feed from people I wasn't following. Facebook decided to present things that were wholly untrue. And all I did was say, this is not true. And then you flagged me for promoting a cybersecurity attack when my entire contribution was to take something you provided in the feed, and I said it's not true. When you have those 5 things in a row, you just say Facebook is unmanageable. It's unusable. It's an absolute and total waste of energy and time. And he said, okay, well, I called you, and this message is being recorded, and we wanted to get to the bottom of what the problem is. You've made that very clear. I'm going to try to resolve it. And I said, before you go, you need to know that the problem is far bigger than my issues with Facebook, because Facebook went from being nothing but a liberal promoter until Zuckerberg decided after the last election that he had become a tool of the Democratic Party and didn't like being bossed around. And so he fired his fact checkers. And then a year later, after Facebook became a very comfortable and desirable place to communicate information, it goes to hell almost immediately after Zuckerberg meets with Trump. And now if you say anything negative of MAGA or you try to protect Israel, you're immediately flagged. And so the problem of Facebook is much bigger than me. Problem of Facebook is that the site is no longer usable. And he says, oh my goodness, yes, I need to deal with this. Okay, I'll try to resolve this. I will call you back. Oh, That was my conversation with a real person at Facebook. I never thought that would occur, but it did. And we had a 15, 20-minute conversation, all recorded. Hopefully it gets somebody's attention. My most recent posts on Facebook were to and I'm not posting on the Craig Wynn site anymore page. I'm only posting on the Facebook feeder page, which is the Yahowah Facebook page. It's a feeder page that we use for the website to put up the blog, for the website to put up the invites, to put up the do you yada, all comes from that site. It's just as I say, it's a feeder site. I don't think we even have 25 followers on that site. So, but I use it. I use the feed, and I present things for the website to keep it current. And so that's really all there is to it. But pretty pathetic. Genuinely a mess. But it's amazing that somebody did call. And they spoke fluent English. They called from the state of California. So Meta is obviously having serious problems. Now, so that we have now solved the community issue that Facebook did provide for a better part of a year. I enjoyed the site. And it provided a sense of community for a better part of a year. And then it got to be nasty because we were being attacked by hashtagging my name and all other manner of attack by the mother goddess cults who have nothing better to do with their life than to try to impugn my reputation. And so we weren't reaching any additional people, and it became a very hostile environment for us. So we were looking to create a sense of community on the website. Joe, working through Claude, created a very nice community page. It was up for about an hour. I posted probably 20 times to it, interacted, I think it was with Kevin during that period of time, and it worked beautifully. Then Joe said it wasn't really quite ready for prime time. He wants to integrate it into more areas of the site. Ultimately, we'd like to have you be able to make comments on the posts that I have, both the vlogs, the shorts, and the blog, all those sections of the website. We'd like family to be able to comment on and us to engage in communication on those. Plus, anybody can add or respond to a topic in the community section, which was up briefly. I hope that it comes back up tomorrow. But that was the missing link really on the site, other than we're continuing to add to the basics. We'll add again at least two, hopefully maybe one basics tomorrow, because we're going to try to do the anticipated vlog on the blog, which is what's going to happen this weekend in Iran and what it means for us. We're going to add that tomorrow. And so with Family Hour, the best I might be able to do is to get one more on Shabuwah. The first one on Shabuwah. Shabuwah is probably going to be a 4-part program. I'm told by Perry, who is working the Ask Yada, which is now Ask Yada's AI assistant, that many of the most thoughtful questions are regarding the 8 individuals that are named, not named, but described on Shabuwah, Taruwah, and Kippurym, and who they might be and who they represent. And so I decided that since there's so many questions on that, the least I could do is go back and translate that section. And when I did, I came up against something that was just profoundly prophetic and specific to us. I read it to both Perry and Rich today, and I think you guys would admit that it's mind-blowing what God had to say and how specific. Wow moment. It is another wow moment. So we'll get to that. It's about 40 pages into the Shabuwah presentation. I'm trying to put these things together so they're sound, solid presentations from God's point of view on these particular topics. And while I'm there, one of the things that Perry has noticed, he has gone through every question and every answer thus far that the AI, which is Claude, has provided, what the questions were and what the answers were. And he is now posting. You'll end up probably with 20, 25 suggestive questions that show up a lot that can just be instantly generated. And that's what he's doing. But he noticed that there was one person in particular, a really, really malignant woman who is trying to gain atta-girl points at that malignant cult that we have talked about in the past. And, we get to see what she has to say. And it's just revolting. So I hope you're listening to this program because you're disgusting. And it's amazing that a group would claim that they're Torah students and yet lock down their own site, not helping anybody, don't give a crap about Israel, don't give a crap about anybody other than themselves. And their fixation is on disparaging me and my wife and those who are part of this covenant community with us. If you don't think we know what we're talking about, then why bother? Just go off and do your own little thing. What's wrong with you? And how many times does Yahowah have to specifically reference you in prophecy to say that he is disgusted with you? And the last one we went over, he actually said he's sending you to Sheol. And yet you still won't back down? You still have to be belligerent? Good grief, people. There's something seriously wrong with you. And God's up to here with you. Now, I know that the most recent argument was, Craig can't be speaking for Yahowah because Yahowah is merciful and he's mean. Are you minds? Have you read anything that Yahowah said through his prophets as to what his response is, not only to you, but to the world in general right now? Have you gone through Isaiah 13 recently, where line after line is Yahowah says, I am disgusted, I am appalled, I am annoyed. My anger is kindled. And so I'm going to annihilate humankind. I'm going to incinerate them. I'm going to turn them into goo. I'm going to baffle them such that they watch their own faces burn. And I'm going to prolong this whole torment because they are so disgusting to me. I'm going to make humans as rare as the gold from Ophir. Haven't you paid any attention to what God has to say? Yeah, he is merciful, but to a very, very, very tiny slice of humanity. And that slice doesn't include you. All right. One of the things I have pursued, and I know this is way beyond anybody's comprehension that hasn't been with me for a very long time and has been, as I am, always willing to go where the words lead. And we have come upon something now that Yahowah has managed to validate every which way. And that is that Dowd will have at least 6 lives. I would say at least 5 lives. I think it's 6 all total. But we know of 5. And Dowd's first life, as we just read from the Ocean Studio, occurred from long, long ago, back into the far reaches of antiquity, and that Dowd was Adam. And that God has a lot to say about the lives of Dowd, of which there are many. And this is such a simple concept that I understand that if you're part of the naysayer cult, you're incapable of comprehending because, well, they're conspiratorialists, and conspiratorialists only have tunnel vision and they look at a single dot on the wall. But the fact of the matter is that we were assured that Dowd would have a second and third life after the one where he was king of Yisra'el, because he himself said that he was coming back to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Kippurym. And God says that he's coming back to be king of the universe with God as Elyon, as all things pertaining to God's influence. And God actually says that he enabled, executed, created, established the covenant with Dowd, which means he's the one who fulfilled the 3 Mow'edym that enabled the covenant's benefit. So when you know that he has been in those three lives, and then you read what we did today from Micah, that Dowd's antiquity goes all the way back in time to the very beginning, and that everything that God has to say about Adam and Dowd coalesce, and that when Yahowah finally introduces us to Dowd, the first thing he says about him is these all things pertaining to Adam. So this is very well established. And then you read the story of Ruth and Boaz, and she, as the Amma, says, I'm going to deliver to you, Boaz, the kinsman redeemer. And she does. So guess who that means is Dowd's mother and father, as he was born yet again to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Mow'edym in 33 CE. That would be Ruth and Boaz, who have had multiple lives under different names as well. God inserts people that he knows and can trust to make certain that his plan stays on pace. So this is another interesting affirmation. As for the boy who would be king, his birth parents were neglectful and horrendous in the life where he was found as an 8-year-old shepherd boy. And this is likely why he made so many mistakes as a man, and showed a lack of character so many times. He didn't have proper parenting, and why he had so much trouble with women. Women were to be abused by him. He was not the kind of man who ever valued a woman for anything other than physicality. And it is likely why God's resolution was to intervene by introducing him to his future mother and father in the 89th Mizmowr, as well as in the 31st Mashal. It's where we find that Dowd is being counseled by his mother, and she indeed would be his mother, and by her husband, and indeed he would be his father. And so it is from that perspective that I want to share this with you. The realization that Dowd would come to know the supportive embrace of an affectionate mother and father, the guidance and the protection of parents is advanced by Yahowah in what is now known as the virgin will bear a child prophecy that is presented in Isaiah 7:14. But of course, it says nothing of the thing. And Yahowah spoke of the Alma. The Alma is someone who existed long ago, whose identity had been concealed and hidden from most, and the great prophet therefore conveyed. It is for this reason, and therefore true, that Yahowah, by the way, it's kind of interesting, this misfit that has never made a valid point, who is the most abusive of the Ask Yada's AI assistant on our site. She has come up with her own little personal way of pronouncing her God's name that is inconsistent with the letters in his name, just as the mother goddess clique has gone through two different iterations, neither one right, one where they tried to justify that Yahweh's name had, with being Yahweh, had a mommy and daddy in it, and they got both concepts wrong. And then they just went to Yod Hey Wah Hey, and so they've gone back to where the world was before I introduced Yahweh's name through these books and this site. Anyway, it says he himself will actually give. He himself, this is Yahowah. He himself will actually give, providing with ongoing implications. This is Nathan. He will offer, appoint, and provide, bringing forth in the call imperfect, third person, masculine, singular, active, for you, the sign, which makes this known, the wonderful and miraculous example and illustration serving as proof, this message on the banner, which can be trusted. It's from oath. And oath is the word that Yahowah uses to describe the influence of the greater and lesser luminaries who will oath serve as a as volunteers to fulfill and signs to convey the meaning of the Mow'edym, the restoring witnesses to the eternal testimony. So the sign which makes known this wonderful, miraculous example and illustration, serving as proof, this message on the banner which can be trusted. God himself going to provide a sign that is consistent with what we have already read in the opening chapter of Bereshith, Genesis. It's for this reason, it's therefore true, it is Yahowah, it is he himself, he is the one who is providing with ongoing implications, and it is the oath, the sign, which is illustrative and serves as proof. It continues, behold, pay attention now. Ha-Alma. Hal-Alma is a young woman who existed long ago as an immortal soul and whose identity has been concealed and largely ignored, leaving the public unaware. Ha-Alma, it's a title, definite article and everything. It is one beginning adult life and marriage, ready to conceive children, to raise a family. It is from Elem, a young man ready to bear children, conceive children. Alam, from antiquity into perpetuity. And Alam, concealed and hidden, covered over and ignored, with the public left unaware because this was not investigated. It is a compound of al, over and above, and ma, to ponder the implications and question who, why, where, how, or when. Ha-Alma will conceive, becoming pregnant with a child. She will have a baby. It's the participle, which is a verbal adjective, feminine singular absolute. And she will give birth, Yalad. She will be impregnated by the father, culminating in the delivery of a son. And she will call out as an invitation to the mikra. So she will call out as an invitation to the mikra. This is Kara. She will proclaim, announce. And this is in the call, take this literally, perfect at this moment, third person, feminine singular, she, his name and his renown. Shemhu, Emmanuel. God is with us. Yahweh provided the oath sign, which makes known the wonderful and miraculous example illustrating and proving this account on the banner which can be trusted. Ha-Alma, the one who existed long ago and will live forevermore, the one whose actual identity has been obscured, leaving almost everyone unaware, is the one who is above and beyond question. She would bear a child, the child who is the son given to us to fulfill the Moed Mikre. And now, as we have learned from the 89th Psalm, with the inclusion of Alu-Hu, we find a direct association with Dowd, making him the son, and the woman his mother. And she is the Amma. And indeed, the preponderance of people have deprived themselves of many things relevant to Dowd's upbringing. So these formative years when his life was counterfeited by Christians and Jews can actually be known, but it has to be investigated to be known. The lies of Christianity have to be obliterated for it to be understood and appreciated. Everything about Jesus was stolen from Dowd. including his birth, but not his mother and father's name, or their identity, or the purpose, or the fact that he was not a baby God. It was a deliberate deception by Christians and Jews, with all of the relevant information regarding his prior life omitted and his return transferred to a myth. Alumim is the plural form, and it would be inclusive of Dowd as the Elam, as the young man, ready to conceive and raise a family. That's what he is doing by fulfilling Chag Matzah. Then as Alma, in the feminine variation, it is addressing a woman who is now ready to be his mother, one from antiquity who would continue well into the future. However, as the verbal roots suggest, she was written out of the story and she was replaced by another, a counterfeit. This time, Moshe's conniving and power-hungry sister Miriam's name was used. It's telling in and of itself, isn't it? All the while, rather than rendering Alma as if it were a Bethulah, virgin, the word should have been dissected, with its component parts understood. Al, over and above, and ma, questioning. The who, the what, the where, the why, the when, and the how of all of this, telling us vital information about the woman who has been deployed throughout God's story. God told us the woman who would deliver the kinsman redeemer, and to whom she would deliver him, and from what city she would deliver him, and that she would be the Alma. The entire story of Ruth and Boaz is a prophecy, a harbinger of precisely what would happen some 2,100 to 2,200 years thereafter. The message of the 89th Mizmowr, 7th chapter of Yeshayah, and Dowd's prophetic 22nd Psalm all integrate really into one consistent and compelling story. It really does the entire presentation from the opening chapter of the Torah through the last chapter of Malachi. The soul reborn in 1 BCE was Dowd as the Bakor, the firstborn son of God. Indeed, as Elion, the hand of Almighty God. His mother and father would have proclaimed, Emmanuel, God is with us, because we are with God. With all of this really so interesting and so previously unheralded, in another chapter we will pursue what additional can be gleaned regarding Ha'ama and all of its various cognates. We will pursue Dowd's birth, as well as his mother and father, considering what is said about them in Bereshith 24:43, Shemoth 2:8, Mashal 30:19, Mizmowr 46:1, while considering the insight from 89:45, where you've just been. Then return to Yeshayah 54:4. In fact, that whole chapter of Yeshayah 54. We might even venture into the Song of Solomon. Oh, my wife wants me to do that in the worst way because, there are so many clues of what Solomon had to say about his surrogate parents, his mother and father, the two that served as his mother and father. So, as a friendly reminder, this was all orchestrated such that it would play out as foretold during the fourth day of creation. The spring Mow'edym would be fulfilled on schedule, the Son of God ready to honor his commitment and establish the covenant at the dawn of the fourth millennium. The luminaries were on duty, just as had been promised. So now returning to the 89th song, after having listened to Yahowah rave over his son and then condemn those who would deny him, Ethan Ha-Izraki interjects, as is the nature of prophets chosen by Yahowah. And he asks what I think is a sensible question, although I'm surely biased. I think it's one that would not, however, be answered for another 3,000 years. And as we ponder what he asks, I'd like to share some conclusions. First, by allowing Ethan to question him, Yahowah is showing us that he respects this man. He cares about what he thinks, and that he is comfortable with him interjecting himself into one of the most essential narratives ever written between God and man. That says a lot. Sometimes, you're trying to drive a point home and you've got somebody that interrupts and wants to lay out some detail that may or may not be related. And you want to say, can you just wind down on me, finish what I'm saying? It wasn't God's approach at all. It says, yeah, it's a valid point. I'm glad you asked that question. It's a question everybody should be asking. That's really, really good about that kind of thing. Not nearly as good. Second, by allowing the question at this point in the song, God is also revealing that he wants his testimony conveyed by men to men. This is because when it is passed through us, it is easier for others to relate to and to understand. If one fellow gets it, there is the implication and every reason to expect that more will follow. Third, so long as we have been listening, Yahowah is comfortable with us questioning him. This is even true if he doesn't provide the answer immediately or directly, as is the case here. This demonstrates that we should always be seeking to learn, to augment what we know, to properly frame the issues, and to put the pieces of the word pictures in their proper places. Fourth, when Yahowah doesn't answer right away, it is likely because the information we seek is offered elsewhere, and we've just missed it previously. And God knows that we learn and grow when we remain vigilant, observant, and thoughtful, finding what he shared for this purpose. He also knows that we don't begin with the kind of sweeping knowledge that you would even be able to process answers like we're considering now. If God had reached out to me 25 years ago and said, oh, by the way, these are the various lives you're going to live and the contributions you're going to make, I would have said, yeah, right. Yeah, come on. It's nonsense. If he would have revealed then even 1% of what we know now, I couldn't have processed it. I didn't have the basis of the knowledge that is required as a foundation to be able to process it. I didn't have the proper perspective. I didn't have sufficient understanding to comprehend it. And it would take 25 years of 10, 12, 14-hour days to get there. And so all things at the proper time. Now we are given an insight that is important, and we make the intelligent deductions regarding its feasibility, and then one after another, God provides confirmation that what we have perceived is true. And so it has to be over the proper process. Otherwise, what's the point of anything? I mean, this gets right back to, if you don't make mistakes and learn from them, your life is a waste. No reason to live. You can't be of any value to anybody. You can't learn, you can't grow, you can't develop, you can't even prove your worth. You're of no interest to anyone if you were to start off life with complete, total, and accurate information so that your recall and your understanding was perfect. What a terrible place to be in. It would truncate everything Yahweh was trying to do. It would render being observant worthless. It would render listening meaningless. It would render thinking and being thoughtful, being wise, understanding, moot. No value to any of it. No reason to read his testimony, no reason to translate it, no reason to ponder the implications of it, because you could not learn anything from it. You'd already be there. You'd know it all. Not a single thing that you could do that would be worthwhile in your life. I don't know why people can't get that through their mind. Or that if you were perfect and everything you said was true, first of all, you couldn't work with Yahweh because he has never used such a person, because such people don't exist. And that the people that he is closest to and enjoys working with the most are highly flawed individuals. Why? Because when you make a mistake, you then have the opportunity to prove that you can be trusted by correcting it, learning from it, and growing from there. And that's why making mistakes and learning from them is so essential. And if those speaking for God can't go through that same process, then what are we doing? Isn't it our point? Isn't it God's point to lead through these examples? To show you it's okay to put the pieces together, to come to a conclusion, to have done your homework and been rational about it and been partially right, and then learn something later that directs your attention to a better, more substantive, inspiring conclusion, and then sharing, this is why I said this is why I now have concluded that this is true. And this is the process that I went through, which brought us to this place. Oh, that's open. It's honest. It's approachable. It's an example that we can live with, that we can grow from, and a way that everyone then has the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to earn Yahweh's trust. And of course, sometimes it's just best that we don't know too much at once. It's overwhelming. I mean, I want to tell you, this job is overwhelming. I don't think there's anybody that's active in the covenant family that isn't a bit overwhelmed, particularly as we move through these last days. It is overwhelming. And if we knew everything that we will eventually know, I think our little brains would just fry out. So without the maturity and the wherewithal to process something particularly profound, a premature revelation would likely overwhelm us. Some people it would incapacitate. So we receive answers and insights like the ones that I have just shared when the time is right and we're prepared to handle what the world has missed. I mean, I cannot overstate how essential this particular lesson has been in all of the quarter century I've spent with God. And you should feel comfortable knowing that you can make a mistake. Just don't be belligerent about it. And then when you learn more, correct it, grow from it, share the correction. Be proud of it, because it demonstrates something profoundly important about you that is exceedingly rare among people. It's the very people that want perfection that are the furthest from it. Now, fifth, when we find a question posed by a prophet, as was Ethan Hajraki, in this particular situation, in almost all cases, they know the answer. I'm not going to ask a question before God that is going to become public if that question is going to somehow embarrass God or take us off track from the conversation that he is pursuing. So they are asking questions for the reader's benefit, not theirs. Moreover, they are setting us up quite often for what comes next. And that is also the case here. Sixth, this question is actually foundational. It is essential to Chanuk's existence, to Ethan's prophecy, to Dowd's restoration, and to Yada's witness. Because, my friends, the answer to this question is until Yada Yahowah. For how long? Adma. Until when? Will the eternal witness, excuse me, will the eternal witness and the restoring testimony of Yahowah what needs to be done to get that very straightforward pronunciation of Yahweh's name from his Towrah, from Haya, from Elohah, from Shalom? Known. Why is it people who were in my company for a decade and they're now deceiving and going backwards? Why is it the people whose ancestors were with Yahowah for 3,000 years can't get this right? It's so foundational. It's from Haya, and it's found in the Towrah. Put the pieces together. It's Yahowah. For how long, Yahowah, will you remain hidden, concealed, and virtually unknown? It's true. Right now, there isn't 1 in a million people who know Yahowah. Not 1 in a million. I'd be surprised if right now there were more than a couple of hundred people in our company who know Yahowah, know his name, use his name, know what he is offering and what he expects in return, know his beloved son, know what he hates and what he loves. The true nature of Yahowah is virtually unknown in our world. And when it comes to that, there is one person who made a difference in changing all of that. And for those who would try to deny it, who was your Nakri? Who was your Choder? Who was the voice? Who is Obed-Edom? Who is the man from Edom? Who is the Adamah Parah? Who is Yada? Who is the herald? Your righteous indignation. Oh, that's really painful. The most recent attack. Oh, Craig can't be speaking for Yahowah because Yahowah's merciful and, he's meaner to us. I'm only meaner to you because you're revolting, because you're an obstacle in the way, because you are leading so many people astray and you won't get it out of your craw to just crawl away. But what is it? Your righteous indignation. Well, that doesn't sound merciful to me. Your overt displeasure, your furious antagonism is kindled and it burns imminently and prominently like fire. Psalm 89:46. Many of you will notice that I've changed the header on the homepage of yadayah.com. John Voight is the one through whom I created this logo, but if you don't like it, blame me entirely. He followed my instructions. It is designed to look like it has been forged like a sword, because this is the Yahowah that exists right now. His animosity is kindled and it burns. It's eminent and it's prominent like a fire. He is righteously indignant. He is overtly displeased. He's furious. He is antagonistic. He is hostile. He is enraged. And that is not going to change over the next 7 years. It gets so bad, as I have said, God is going to essentially eliminate humankind. So, Yahowah is loving because he's hateful. If he were not hateful, he would not be loving. God is not looking for us to be mild-mannered and sweet and to attract all the little people that just want to be loved. No. He wants us to be as aggressive as he is. He wants our indignation and displeasure and antagonism to burn. If you're going to represent Yahowah, you must act like Yahowah. Yahowah's response to humanity right now is this: righteously indignant, overtly displeased, antagonistic, and furious. His rage is kindled and it burns. If you can't deal with that, if you need your God to be all cuddly and cute, all loving, all merciful, then you're dealing with a false God, one that you have made to accommodate you. God's fed up with humankind, and for damn good reason. The fact is that you cannot be loving until you learn who, how, where, when, why, and most importantly, how to hate. We must learn how to hate those who are deliberately deceitful, those who are antagonistic towards God and his people, those who deceive and yet parade around as if they're students of the Towrah. We must despise the rabbis, the priests, the pastors, the imams, along with the rapists and the pedophiles, the terrorists. If you do not despise Donald Trump, who is the human manifestation of Satan, then you are as corrupt as he is. So we have a trend. This is the third time in two statements where we have encountered a variation of concealed and hidden. This didn't happen per chance. And it did not occur during Dowd's youth as the former shepherd prepared to serve as the lamb. The identity of his mother then were concealed. And now it's God's true identity that has remained unknown, like father, like son. The world doesn't know Yahowah. The world doesn't know Dowd. They won't even use either one of their names. With 2.4 billion Christians, 1.9 billion Muslims, 1.1 billion Hindus, 0.5 billion Buddhists, and another 500 million animists, would be the crazies, and I couldn't call them crazies, that's not fair, but the nature worshipers and throughout Africa and other places, sun, wind, fire, that sort of thing. That represents some 80% of the world's 8 billion people. 80% of 8 billion people are religious. It's hard for most to accept the fact that Yahweh is God and that he is essentially unknown because he hates religion and he's going to annihilate the religious. You know, we're coming to the point of the great extinction event. If we're presenting God as, oh, he's so loving, he just wants to embrace you, he loves all the little children, Come and sit at mommy's feet. Daddy will love you. We're doing the world a grave disservice, because 99.999% of those who are alive today will not be alive at the conclusion of Taruwah in 2033. And God's riddance of the malcreants is because he loves his people, and he wants to protect the remnant, and he wants to restore and save this planet. So for most of the past 2,000 years, there wasn't a single soul who knew or served Yah. So let's be clear. The religious do not know God, nor do the conspiratorial. Religious gods have been and continue to be conceived by the very men the real God made. Therefore, goddamn religion. Yahowah hates the institution, and he is furious with religious believers, anti-Semites, conspiratorialists, those who are overtly political. Look what the blend of religion and politics with MAGA has conceived with Donald Trump and the literal destruction of the world. This is God's constant. It's unchanging. It's his overriding message to the world. The religious are not speaking for him. They are not leading anyone to God. They are not serving God. They're not even praying to or worshiping God. Not that God wants to be prayed to or worshiping. They are angering and antagonizing God. Yahweh's animosity towards the religious burns like an all-consuming blaze. He first revealed his propensity to scorch that which annoyed him in Barbersheth with Sodom, and then again outside the Israeli encampment prior to Moshe's meltdown and Numbers. So this is nothing new. God, when he saw his people creating the golden calf, he had the earth swallow them. When he heard the spies come back with all manner of lies, he said, "You're all going to die. If you're everybody over 20 years of age, not going to be a pile of carcasses." God is on record stating that he will incinerate everyone and anything that he perceives as tainted by the plague of religion or politics, of conspiracy, of anti-Semitism. You don't have to have all four. One will do you. So when you see the Haredi dancing a religious jig or bobbing their heads against a stone wall, Muslims prostrating themselves, or Twistians bowing down in prayer, you'll know their fate and their final doom. Oh, that's another thing this misguided clique of malcreants is doing. They want to promote the way God tells you to pray. It's just disgusting. The last time the majority of Yisraelites knew Yahowah was in year 3000 Yah. 3 millennia ago, during Dowd's initial reign as king. And even then, it was for a brief period. And even then, of course, they rebelled against him. And prior to that time, especially during the Exodus, the Israelites were obnoxious towards God. Ever since and until quite recently, the number of Jews who knew God dwindled to none, zero. And it would not be until we began to post the Yahowah series online that this finally began to change, albeit very slowly. These books are labeled Yahowah for a reason, with 1,800,000 shrill Jewish voices, and another 5 billion Christians and Muslims fanning the flames of divine wrath. Well, I thought that God might enjoy something less irritating. But nonetheless, those who are irritating found me. Even today, with all of the attention we have brought to his name and his story, Yahowah remains unpopular. For example, the 1.8 million Haredi are so intellectually incapacitated by their rabbis after constant religious manipulation, they can only pretend to be godly and to feign righteousness. And all the while, they continue to engender Yahowah's antagonism. So let's be clear. We cannot be consistent with God and pro-Israel without being anti-Judaism. Can you process that? You cannot be consistent with God. You cannot serve with God. You cannot be pro-Israel without being anti-Judaism. While the religious would equate Judaism with being Jewish, God says just the opposite. One cannot be Yehud while religious. You can be Jewish. You just can't be a Yehud, which means beloved of Yah. 3 millennia, of course, is a very long time, at least by our standards, but perhaps not by God's. Time does not flow for him as it does for us. Unlike creatures bound to the earth, Yahowah, as a spiritual being, determines exactly how he will experience time, varying the pace of its flow to suit his needs. The 20 centuries which have crawled past since the Messiah, Dowd, fulfilled Chag Matzah, were so horrid, it's unlikely that God paid attention to anything that occurred during that span. Unfortunately, we have reached the conclusion of this interval. With each word we translate and share, with each new revelation and insight, Yahowah becomes, well, less hidden, better known, at least to a few people. And God's quite comfortable with it remaining that way, with it being a few people. He is more into this than he is to this. When father and son return on Yom Kippurym, the day of reconciliations in year 6000 Yah, October 2nd at sunset, 2033 in Jerusalem, God will be appreciated to the extent that Yahowah's Choder, his stem, his Nakri, his observant foreigner, his Nesh sign of the sun, his Bashar, herald of the king, and his Zeroah, the one sowing the seeds of the harvest, make that possible. Augmenting what we have done through the books, blogs, and yadayah.com site, within 4 years of this writing, on Passover and 2030, we can expect Yah, Yah's God, Elijah, and Yada, he knows, to enter the city of Dowd, Jerusalem, the source of instruction on reconciliation, to let the world know, in no uncertain terms, just how displeased God is with humankind, particularly Christians, Muslims, Marxists, MAGA, the Haredim, the conspiratorial, the militant, and the anti-Semitic. Our message is not going to be conciliatory. We're not going to be evangelists. We're not going to beg anyone to listen. We're not going to call people such that they can pick and choose what they like or don't like. We're going to tell them the truth. God is mad as hell, and he's not going to take it anymore. You either accept his terms and show that you're worthy of consideration, or he will push you away and you won't survive. The realization that Yahowah has been unknown to his people and to all mankind for millennia is not only an essential reminder of man's overwhelming preference for religion over relationship, the one that God intended. This underscores the need for Yahowah to reinstall his routinely deployed one and the Amma, productive mother at this particular time. Without them, mankind's ignorance of Yahowah and Dowd would remain. There would be no Shabuwah or Taruwah harvest, no Yom Kippurym return, or camping out together during Sukkah. It would all have been for naught. This is why Yahowah spoke so vociferously about our collaboration together. So it should be no surprise that the ultimate discovery, that of Dowd being the one who fulfilled the Mow'edym as the Son of God and returning king, was found and shared by this same witness, the one who would also reintroduce Yahowah's name. So now, as the sands of time, they rush out of the hourglass, it gets personal because God's preferred witness will have but one lifetime remaining to resolve the lingering conflict. Since the previous question is answered by Ethan's next statement, let's consider how one idea flows into the next. Remember, the previous statement was, for how long, Yahowah, will you remain hidden, concealed, and virtually unknown? Your righteous indignation, your overt displeasure, and furious antagonism, they're kindled and burn against the foolish and brutish, eminently and prominently, like fire. You have chosen to remind me as one of the most memorable of men. Your will is to recall this information about a noteworthy man and these events to me, asserting these truths for me as a man. So, Zakar means to remember, and Zakar is a man, and they are written identically in the original text. This was conveyed in the call imperative second person masculine singular. So you have chosen to remind me as one of the more memorable of men to ponder the declaration of one life in this world, to consider how much time is left, and to inquire how temporary things compare to all eternity. Machalet, what is one lifetime? Such that we know how long things will continue to transpire in this world at the present pace, even how long time is managed. Was it for nothing? For false pretenses? And for no result that you, speaking to Yahowah, created all of the descendants of Adam? Mizmowr, lyrics to sing, Psalm 89:47. If it were not for Yada and Yada Yahowah, they would all be for naught. Creation would be for naught. If it were not for Noach, the experiment with the Sama man would be for naught. If it were not for Eldod and Midod during the time that Moshe gave up, the children of Yisra'el would never have had a completed Towrah. In fact, half of it would be unknown, and the story would not have continued. Had it not been for Ethan Ha'azraki, the Amma, and her husband, Dowd would have died estranged from Yahowah and would never have fulfilled Pesach Matzah Mekudem. Had we not returned at this time to tell you what we have learned about Yahowah, revealing 10,000 things that no one had pondered previously, who have written 35 books, 25,000 pages, thousands of audio programs, to reintroduce Yahweh's name, to restore Dowd's reputation and his achievements, to explain the timeline, the purpose of the Moed Mikri, the conditions of the covenant, the nature of the Torah, the revelations of the prophets. Had that not all occurred as Yahweh arranged it to happen, it would all be for nothing and no result. In this context, of course, that statement is profound. God wants to remind us that everything he has planned must be arranged such that it occurs as foretold. And now all of it has to materialize over one lifetime, this one, for there to be a favorable result for humankind. As such, it appears that Ethan, the perpetually reoccurring, the steadfast, the continuously deployed and eternally engaged, the long-established and unrelenting one, who is perpetually productive, Ha is Rocky, the prepared and equipped one, ready for battle, rising up as a tree, coming forth and shining with logical expressions regarding all of the sequence of events, as a Yisra'el, is now drawing our attention to our collaboration at this time. Now, had Ethan not engaged in this way to salvage Dowd's relationship with Yahweh, had he not prevailed, there would be no salvation. There would be no covenant. There would be no fulfilled prophecy and no chance to enter God's presence. It would all have been for naught. Now, do you get an understanding as to why God just didn't leave all this to chance? Why he picked people, souls that he knew, that he realized he could rely upon because they'd figure it out and get it done because they were tenacious, because they would work with him? Well, Ethan Haj Rocky began sharing what he had come to know about Yahweh. And this had begun, well, a long, long time ago. We're even told how he would return, coming out of the sea to agitate and eventually crush the ultimate adversary, Rahab, while serving as the final Yisra'el. From that point, it was all about Dowd, with Yahweh telling us that his son, our Messiah and returning king, was not only our Savior, but Elyon, the very influence of God. Then Yahweh equated Dowd to the sun and to the one reflecting his brilliance as the moon. Thereafter, the narrative has been condemning of those who have robbed the Son of God of his dignity and acclaim, which would be virtually the entire planet. Thereupon, we come upon this statement, the only one of its kind in the Psalms. Revealed near the center of mankind's journey out of the garden and back to Eden around 982 BCE, Dowd's song serves as a marker in time. 1,000 years thereafter, on Passover in 33 CE, God's beloved Son served as the Yisra'el, the sacrificial lamb, and he fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bekodim to redeem his people and to enable the covenant's blessings. 40 Yowbel thereafter, he will return to reconcile the remnant of Yisra'el on Yom Kippurym. The thought of the Messiah suffering in this manner some 2,000 years ago, is hard to fathom from our perspective, but not from the Father's or from his own. What are 2 hellish days compared to an eternity with thousands of covenant members, now home as a result of the sacrifice? And all the while, we were enveloped in the Spirit of Yah. The anguishing memory would fade, while the covenant he enabled would endure forever, as well as the knowledge that he did this for us. The 3 epochs of 40 Yowbel, each lasting 2,000 years, of course, may seem like an interminable period. However, for God and for those with him, in the spiritual realm of the heavens of the 7th dimension, it equates to the blink of an eye. Time is relative, albeit not here, not for us, not now. The period from the expulsion from Eden to the affirmation of the covenant with Abraham, allowing us to re-enter, would be 40 Yowbel. Another 2,000 years would pass from our perspective looking back, until Father and Son delivered the benefits of the covenant by fulfilling Passover, unyeasted bread, and firstborn children. And from the fulfillment of the first 3 Mow'edym in year 4,000 Yah, to the return of Father and Son to enable the final Mikre in year 6,000 Yah, of course, will be another 40 Yowbel, bringing us to 2033 CE. Just 7 years now from this program in the spring of 2026. This is the duration of events that is being addressed. God's timing for this to play out is what we have presented and conceived. And of course, much of this revolves around Dowd. He is the king, not only then, but also tomorrow. He is the Messiah, the Son of God, the Passover Lamb. And should I be right about the designation of firstborn being a reference to Adam, which Yahowah has now affirmed, then Dowd is featured from the very beginning to the end of the timeline. There is even some indication that Dowd could also have been Shem, based upon Yahowah's comments pursuant to him, to his father, Noah, and to his brothers, Canaan and Japheth, if so. This would have given Yahowah yet another lifetime to have evaluated Dowd's soul before his pronouncements regarding him as an 8-year-old boy at this time. These things all considered, rest assured, Yahowah did not conceive humankind for us to be religious and antagonistic. Therefore, to save us from ourselves, Father and Son resolved the issues which separated them and those that estranged the rest of us, with these lyrics showcasing his plan. And now, 3,000 years later, I'm sharing our thoughts, all to prepare people for the harvest and to equip the covenant members for their responsibilities going forward. As we have discovered, Yahowah initiates the relationships he wants to form, leaving our response subject to our own free will. He picks and he chooses among the men and women who either amuse him, impress him, or just pique his interest in some way, seeing them as potentially serviceable. All of these individuals share something in common, however, and that each has walked away from religion and politics prior to Yahowah's introduction. They're all willing to listen, even go where his words lead. And they all see it through. Free will, of course, works both ways. Yahowah enjoys it, which is why he offered free will to us. So since it is his universe and his home, He's entitled to invite whomever he pleases to spend all eternity with him, so long as he is consistent in his approach and the beneficiaries are properly vetted. And that is essential. It isn't to say that it is impossible to find Yahowah independently, but as the previous statement suggests, God is hidden from most because the preponderance of people are either religious, political, conspiratorial, patriotic, militant, or otherwise too distracted to consider the truth. And they can't even begin by getting his name right. That's just the first step. But more than any other reason that so few people know Yahowah is because of men like Paul. They plagued the world with their lies. And so just as Shaul was called out by name and condemned as the plague of death in Habakkuk, the son of evil is similarly identified in the 89th Mizmowr. This is the man who authored the Christian New Testament's first 14 tomes. It's most deadly. He's the one who inspired Mark, Luke, Acts, and Matthew with his vitriol. And if that were not enough, in response to his demonic appeal, Akiba and company would conceive Judaism as a rebuttal. And while Paul was the villain, Dowd is the Gabor. It serves as the root of Gabor, Gaborah, and Gabriel. The statement reads, "What man of strength and of character, who is confirmed and empowered to prevail, continues to live while restoring life, and will not witness a continuance of death as a result of the plague. He delivers his soul, rescuing and saving his persona, his nephesh, from the hand and the influence of Shaul, questioning him." Pause now and consider what this implies. And so we shall. This will be our concluding statement for this program. We'll return to it on our program, hopefully tomorrow. What man of strength and character? Who is the Gabor? As the basis of Gabor and Gaborah and Gabriel, who is confirmed, who has been empowered to prevail, and who continues to live, who isn't dead and buried, as Peter and Paul would portend, who continues to live. That's because the death of a physical body is meaningless. Good riddance. It's the soul that matters. And it says here, he will not witness a continuance of death. Body dies, the soul immediately ends up in the presence of Yah. He delivers his soul. Yahowah delivers his soul. He rescues and saves this persona from the hand and the influence of Shaul. And so who was it that was the first to associate the demon-possessed anti-Towrah Shaul, who was so anti-Dowd 3,000 years ago, with the Shaul who was so antagonistic towards Dowd, celebrating his death, and was so vehemently anti-Towrah 2,000 years ago? Would it not be this same person? Who is the one that revealed that Dowd would live many lives and that God would save through him? And that Shaul was the one who manipulated everything that pertains to Dowd to create the myth of Christianity. Same person, right? Maybe you ought to listen to him. He got a whole lot right, didn't he? That no one else has ever seen. Do you think there might be a reason? Thank you for listening.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch Yow on our next podcast.